Welcome to CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte. Well, the Blue Jackets have fallen on some hard times here late in the season. They have lost 4 straight games, and even more concerning, they haven't been able to score goals. They were shut out in back-to-back games at Nationwide Arena this past week, and they went over 8 periods in between scoring goals. Now, what's going on, you might ask? This is a Blue Jackets team that throughout the course of the season has not had any problems in scoring goals. As a matter of fact, getting 5 or 6 goals in a game has seemed pretty routine. Well, it's very simple. All you have to do is 2 things. Check the calendar and check the schedule. And here's what I mean. We're going into late March, and that means that there are teams that are already in the playoffs that are starting to get geared up for the playoffs. There are other teams that are hoping to make the playoffs that are getting geared up for that run. And what happens when you're getting geared up? It's very simple. You play tough defense. Everything becomes more concentrated on defense. There are more guys packed in front of the goaltender. It's harder to get the puck to the net. When you do get the puck to the net, there are more people there to clear out the rebounds and not give you the second and third opportunities. It is just simply that time of the year. And for the Blue Jackets, they've got to make adjustments. This is a young team that has a lot of players that haven't played meaningful games in March in the National Hockey League before. And there are other guys that haven't done it for a long time. So it's just about finding your groove once again and making those adjustments so that you can win games. So what do the Blue Jackets have to do so that they can get back to their winning ways? Well, a couple of things. First of all, they've got to start to screen goaltenders better. They need to get more inside, as Dean Evison likes to say. And when he says that, they've got to get the puck to the net more, and that means dragging it to the net more. That means getting close shots on the goaltender, and even if those shots are off the pads, having that second guy come in and looking for that second opportunity. But another thing that has really plagued the Blue Jackets as of late is their special teams. The Blue Jackets' power play at one point during the season was really doing a good job. They were really clicking on that power play. Now, that was also when Sean Monahan was healthy, and he was the bumper in the middle there, and he was making some things happen. But even after that, with Adam Fantilli taking his spot, the Blue Jackets were doing well on the power play. But right now, it is struggling. And when you get to playoff hockey and you get those opportunities to skate with a man advantage, you just simply have to take advantage of that and get the job done. They haven't been doing that as of late. Now, that power play in the last couple of games has looked better. They need to zip the puck around a little bit more. I talked with Mike Havlin, who's an assistant coach for the Blue Jackets, who oversees the power play, and I simply asked him, I said, when you're moving the puck slower on the power play, does that mean that you're thinking too much? And he said, yeah, that can happen. And you start to think a lot when you're not having success and when the puck's not finding the back of the net. So that's where the Blue Jackets are with the power play. And on the penalty kill, that's another important facet of the game. When you get to this time of year, they've struggled a little bit there as well. They've got to put it all together. Now, so that's all the bad news. Here's the good news. There are plenty of games left for the Blue Jackets to still get done what they want to do, and that is find a place in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this is a team that if you look at them throughout the course of the year and look at the problems that they faced and how they overcame those problems, I'm just thinking about the fact that early in the year, they couldn't buy themselves a win away from Nationwide Arena. The road record, even though you look at it now and it's still not great, a lot of those losses came early in the season. So one of their problems was winning on the road. They found a way to start winning games on the road. They had a problem in closing out games in the third period, holding leads in the third period. They corrected that problem. Again, it's a team that is still growing, it is still learning, and throughout the course of the season, there have been different lessons that they have had to learn, and they've done that throughout the course of the year. Now, time is short, but there is still time to learn lessons and make corrections. And for the Blue Jackets, they need to do that, and I feel that they will. Now, the other thing I said, you check the calendar, you check the schedule. You look at the opponents that the Blue Jackets are facing. I mean, just in the past homestand, they took on the Vegas Golden Knights. They're definitely going to the playoffs, and they've also recently won a Stanley Cup. The New York Rangers, who just got themselves back into the playoff picture, but it's the New York Rangers. They know about winning at this time of the year. The New Jersey Devils, they have been in the playoffs, and they are headed back to the playoffs. You've got the Florida Panthers coming in. They're the defending Stanley Cup champions. So, look, you're not going to get any favors on the schedule. Every night it's going to be a battle. For the Blue Jackets, their playoffs are right now, and that's why they need to make those adjustments, and they need to figure out ways to win. because really they've been in the playoffs for about the past month or so. And it's all about learning, figuring it out, and getting the job done. So that's where this team is as it gets ready to go down this stretch and try to finish it off and get to where they want to be. Well, I had a chance to catch up with a guy that is a part architect of this Blue Jackets team, and that's John Davidson. He is the former president of hockey operations. John Davidson started his career as a goaltender in the National Hockey League, and then he became a broadcaster. In fact, he was so good as a broadcaster, he wound up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But he turned his back on that profession, and he got into team management. He ran the St. Louis Blues. He came here to the Blue Jackets. He went to the New York Rangers for a bit and then came back to the Blue Jackets. Now he is a special advisor to this franchise. And, oh, by the way, also a part-time color analyst on TV. When Jody Shelley has to miss games, John Davidson is the guy that comes in. And after his most recent trip here to Columbus, I had a chance to catch up with JD and talk about broadcasting, but more so talk about these young players who he helped to find and draft and develop. Well, JD, it was good to see you earlier this week when you were in town to do the game between the Blue Jackets and the Devils. I've got to ask you, you got out of broadcasting, retired from that a number of years ago before you started being the president of hockey operations of teams. Did you ever figure that it would come back full circle and you'd be broadcasting even a little bit again?
Not really. No, I didn't. But at the same time, I always watch. I try to watch every single night, actually, or during the day on weekends, all the games, and like to keep up with everything. So when I have a little more time on my hands, like I do now, to have this opportunity. Listen, Jody on Mondays does a lot of the Amazon games. Jody Shelley. So Mike Priest called me, who runs the Blue Jackets, and says, "Hey, listen, you had a thought. Would you think about it? It's going to be about 5 different times during the season." I said, "I don't have to think about it. I'd love to do it. I like to be around the Blue Jackets. I like to every aspect of it, around you guys, around the TV guys, around the players, around the coaches, trainers. It's healthy. It's good, and it's a lifestyle, as you know, that we've had for how many? It gets into decades." So to be able to be around it is terrific. I've enjoyed every second of it, and it fires you up a little bit.
I got to ask you, when you come back in a role as a broadcaster, completely different from where you were, obviously, when you were the president of hockey operations, you were very instrumental in helping to get a lot of the guys that are on this team, and especially the younger guys through the drafts that you were part of when you were in that previous role. When you talk to them now, because I see you go around the room pregame and you're trying to get your information, you already know a lot of these guys, but is the way you talk to them now different than it was when you had that previous role?
No, what's gratifying, I think, and not only for myself but for Jarmo Kekalainen and all the scouts and the front office, is you go through this process, and it's not perfect, it's hard, but when you see the fruits of all those years of development and trying to make the right choices, and to see the Kent Johnsons and the Marchenkos and the Matejchuks, and it goes on with 7, 8, 9 players. Even look at Zach. I remember when we drafted him, Zach Werenski, to see it blossom somewhat, and they're not there yet, but they've certainly, a number of them have made a great step. I really feel good about it. It sets the base for the franchise that it gives you a chance knowing that we've got some good players here. Some of the things didn't work, but a lot of them have. And it makes you feel really good about it. Now, when I go and talk to them, I've known them. I've known them when they've shown up and they're thin and they're young and they're not ready, but they go through that process of 1 or 2 or 3 years of working on their bodies and their minds and their off seasons, and to see Kent Johnson show up this season and just pop like he did, to see Marchenko pop like he has, to see Voronkov pop like he has, to see Matejchuk pop like he has. And they're not there, but they're getting there, and they've made significant strides. And as many others, you take a Jay Christensen, for instance, who's put in a lot of ice time for this team this year. he wasn't expected to come here and be a star, and who knew if he was ever going to make it. But there's something about that kid that drives him. And for me and others to go and just say hello and how you doing, I'm proud of you, that type of thing is what I get into more than anything else.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about all those guys, because I was going to ask you, is there one guy that stands out above the rest that has really surprised you with his development? But when you were naming them off, I was thinking about specifically Marchenko and Voronkov, because these were two guys that were drafted, and then you had to wait years for them to
Yeah.
finish playing in Russia before they even came over to North America to
Yeah.
play. And when you're making those picks, you're basing your picks based on what
Yeah.
these guys have done up until the time that they're
Yeah.
18 years old. You don't really know how it's going to pan out. But man, I almost forgot that we had to wait 2 or 3 years for
Yeah.
those guys to get over here, and it sure has been worth the wait, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah. I'd throw Chinnikov in there too. Hopefully
Yep.
that he gets his game going because he had 15 points in 20 games before he was injured earlier in the season. Yeah, it's so hard to be patient. It really is. Interesting. When I was last on an aircraft, I watched the Russian Five, which is a documentary on Detroit and how they brought the original Russians over and helped them win cups, and it took a long time, but they're talented people. They're talented players, and they want to win. And their personalities are really good. I've enjoyed that whole process, and again, in watching the Russian Five, it took Steve Yzerman until his 14th year to win a cup. It's hard. It's really hard. But if you can make some progress and keep, you got to go take 3 steps up, then you do one back, but 3 steps up, one back. As long as you keep doing that with these young players, it's good. There's many others we didn't even mention. I'd throw Sillinger in there as another one. When he's out with the injury, what's interesting is when they're out, you realize you miss guys. You really do. But to see this all happening in a season where there was so much turmoil, but to see them pull together after the Johnny Hockey incident and all that, the coaches have been very good. It's been fun to watch this whole development. And I oversee it. I've been around a long time, but to see the people like Yarmo, we all make mistakes. Yarmo did, I did, everybody does. But to see these things happen, and all the scouts that we've had over the years that get involved with the amateur draft, I feel really good for those guys. I really do, because this is what they wait for. And you've got to have that. It's so horrible. That word patience is enough to drive you crazy. It really is. But if you don't have it, then it's not going to work. It's just that simple. And you have to pay that price, and this franchise has. And to see something on the positive side of things is pretty good.
Yeah, and like you were saying, you guys knew this team had talent. I think last year was a pretty big disappointment that the team didn't perform up to the level of talent that really had been assembled. Now, that being said, as you stated earlier, Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, Kirill Marchenko, all these guys, they have one more year, and they have it one more year figured
Yeah.
out, and one more year in Kent Johnson's case in the gym during the summer to get bigger and to get better. So, as you watch all this, is it some of it's a surprise based on, as you just said, what happened, the tragedy with Johnny and his brother before the season even started. But I would imagine that you're still sitting back and going, yeah, well, maybe this is a surprise to a lot of people in hockey, but this is exactly what we expected.
Yeah. It is, but again, it takes time, and you don't know when it's going to happen. But to see so many of the players do a lot of good things at the same time, it's really good. And then there's other things, like the Monahan signing. We knew that he wanted to come here because he really wanted to play with Johnny Hockey. So we really were waiting our turn to put that together. And then when Don took over, we took it to him, and Don Waddell was able to make the deal with him. So that's something that our team, our group, was really involved with in putting that together. It made a big difference. We knew that, like last year, Provorov was going to go into his last year this year. This season is his last season under his contract, and we could have traded him. And I said, no, you never know where it goes here. You never know what your assets are going to be when it comes to this final year and the deadline. And he's played so well, and I know he wants to stay. We'll see where that goes. Who knows? But it was well worth the patience to keep a person like him, because he's a top 4 defenseman. They just don't grow on trees. They're hard to find. The patience of Matejchuk we loved him. I mean, we loved him when we drafted him. We loved him watching him develop through his World Junior and his last year in junior, playing big minutes and carrying a team. And we knew we needed some time in the minors, and of course through camp, that's exactly what happened. He's got a future here. It's really good to see Sillinger find roles and developing and the way he competes, things along those lines. It's just been a fun ride here this season. You don't want to get ahead of yourself because it's such a long way to go. And it's a simple. It sounds simple, but if you think about it, when you climb a mountain, the higher you go up that mountain, or if you're going to climb the big buildings in New York, when you start going up the Empire State, when you start getting that last third of the way, man, you start running out of breath. It's hard. Lactic acid in your legs, the whole thing. Mind you, I'd take the elevator, but still, you climb a mountain, the higher you go, the harder it is. And that's exactly what it is in our league. So this is going to get harder to win, but I think we'll have a better chance to win as we move forward.
And I'm with you, by the way. It's funny you mentioned that about the climbing thing because we were in New York. My son was in town, and we went to see the Statue of Liberty, which I've never done. And we only went as far as the pedestal, and I walked the steps, and I wish I'd gotten on the elevator.
Isn't that a neat place over there, though?
Yes, it is.
It really is special. It's a special place.
No, there's no doubt. It is very special. Talking with John Davidson. He's a special advisor for the Blue Jackets and a sometimes color commentator on the TV. JD, you know what it's like when you get to this time of the year, and the Blue Jackets have been challenged lately. They've been challenged to score goals, which hasn't been a problem all year. They've been challenged in finding ways to win games. And I really think if you just look at the calendar and you look at the opposition, you can pretty much figure out why. You were talking earlier about you never know when the players are going to come together and they're going to pop in their individual ways, and if they're going to do it together. Well, you start doing that in the regular season, and now there's another step that you have to take, isn't there, when it comes to figuring out how to become a playoff team. And then once you do that, how you're going to be a successful playoff team.
Yeah. Well, you know what March Madness is, right? In basketball, well, we have our March Madness in hockey. That's when it really gets tough. That's when it really gets hard. And when you have a group of young players that are primarily going through it for the first time, where their playoffs are on right now, it's hard. It's hard. It's harder to score. If you look at a lot of the teams that are playing well, take example Montreal. Look at their goals against their last 8-10 games. It's hard to score, and you've got to be committed to keeping the puck out of the net. And but I think anybody that follows the Blue Jackets, if you said going into this season that this team at the 65 game mark would be right in the thick of it and have a chance to get there, to the dance, to the playoffs, that would be something you'd be nodding your head about. So the plus here is that these players and the whole staff, the whole city is going through this. It's like a playoff right now. The race is on. And if they get there, fantastic. That'll be a special time. If they don't get there, at least it's something you're going to be able to say, you know what? Now we know what it's about. We know what it's about. Let's get back to it. Let's get at it, and then grow some more for next season. So it's as a management person, when you sit back and you have to think your way through all this with the presence of mind of having the proper patience, yet push and want and get if you can, you also have to understand exactly where you are. And I think it will be successful if this team keeps grinding and puts forth every ounce of effort they have, and the young players see something or have an understanding of how hard this really is. It's going to make them train even harder next summer. So I think it's as a Blue Jackets organization right now, trying to get back or trying to get to that point, they're in a good spot.
Yeah, I agree with you, because this is just the truth, and it's really what you just said. Going into this season, there were not a lot of expectations for this team. The most expectation was from the players inside of the room. On the outside, everybody was counting them out. And then all of a sudden, they've played the way that they have. They've been in a playoff spot for as long as they have. Now, if they were to miss, it's going to be a big disappointment. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, this season is a success, no matter what happens at the end. And we hope that what happens is
Yeah.
they're playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But no matter what, this has already been a success, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think with the tragedy at the beginning of the season, it was a galvanizing effect that took place with this group, which was really good. That's how you honor the Goodrow family. That's just how you do it. I mean, Johnny was you know, I don't know didn't know his brother as well, but Johnny he's a hockey nerd. He loved being around there, and the players, they had a special bond. So that was something that was really good and galvanizing for everybody. I think we've had the best coaching we've had in a few years as a group. You know, last season, the Babcock thing just created a problem. And I was there. I lived it. I was in charge of everything. The year before, Brad Larson, he backed that up one more year. Brad had a great year. Then it fell apart some. So I think when you look at us now, as far as coaching goes with this group, this is the best coaching group that we've had in 3 years. That makes a difference when you combine that with also the players starting to pop a little bit all over the place. Everybody's rowing in the right direction, but pulling that rope in the right direction. And they still are. I know that they want to win. They want to win badly. They're working at trying to do that. The last 2 years prior to this one, the injuries were atrocious. It just didn't give you much of a chance. This season they've had some, but it's been different. And we've had players want to play through injuries and a lot of different things. So that's a positive sign. This is all adding up into good stuff. Now, I know that it's still a race. They want to get there. They're going to have to play well. There's 3 games left with Ottawa. The majority of their games are on the road. That are on the road are all within the division, except for one, I believe. So it's sitting there. Got to go get them. That's what you got to do.
Is it fair to say you watch more hockey right now than you ever have? Maybe ever is not quite, but
No,
you watch a lot.
I watch every day, every night. I enjoy it. It's in the blood. Weekends they start at 1 o'clock, sometimes noon. I watch just about every night. It's getting a little harder to stay up late and watch those late ones, but you got it. It's when it's in your blood, Bob. It's in your blood. That's what it is. It's been a 52-year run here, so I've enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. I like watching the trends of the game. It's interesting right now watching how this league was a goal scoring league. It was run and gun, and now it's tightened up. It's hard to score, and you can see that teams are they're ramping up for the playoffs. That's what it takes. It's not what you get; it's what you give up, and it's getting harder to score out there. It's going to be a tough grind here for the last couple 3-4 weeks.
It's your favorite time, right? Well, you were a goalie.
Absolutely.
This is when you like it, when everybody locks down and makes your job easy.
But if you're in the race, man, it makes it easy to get up. Let's get to the rink and get at it here. And you love the meetings and you love the strategy. There's nothing not to love about this time of year if you're in it. If you can stay in it and try to get there.
You have any favorites in the East and West? Any predictions?
That's a pretty good question. I think Colorado and Dallas have done a nice job loading up. Edmonton's always going to be a run. Far as our side goes, it's Washington has been a really good story this year. They've been a steady story all the way through. Florida, you can sort of sense that they're going to try to get themselves ready. So when the puck drops, I'm ready to go. I'd say the same thing for Vegas on the other side too. But Washington, to me, there's something special about that group. They did a great job in the offseason, and they're pushing the right buttons. The Ovechkin thing, chasing Gretz, is fantastic. So I'd have to say that they'd be right at the top. However, I will say that I think some of these teams, and whoever gets into those wild cards, it's not going to be a walkover. This is really close, really, really tight.
Yeah, you got a couple of guys that worked with you in Columbus, one in the West, one in the East. Chris McFarland out there in Colorado doing the basically a wholesale change, if you will, of his roster throughout the course of the season. Then you got Bill Zito in Florida, and Billy the rich just keep getting richer for the defending Stanley Cup champs.
Hey, listen, both those guys have done a terrific job. I'm really happy. Billy's won the Cup last year, obviously, and he keeps grinding it out, getting ready for the playoffs. And to see what Chris McFarland's done, as you mentioned, on the run here, this hasn't been a summer turnover. This has been on the run during the season. recognizing areas that need help and knowing that the window's open when you have McKinnon playing the way he's doing and the way Makar's playing. I mean, who changes two goaltenders during the same season and get results? I mean, he's done a nice job, and they're both hockey guys. Bill's won a cup. I'm happy that C-Mac's been able to do as well as he has too.
Well, JD, thank you for the time. It's always great when I get a chance to see you. It's great to have you back in the broadcast here
Thanks,
for
man.
a couple of games.
Yeah,
I really
I
appreciate
appreciate it.
that. But it's always great to catch up, and thanks for doing this with me. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Anytime, Bob. You know that. All the best. Thank you.
Always great to catch up with John Davidson and get his perspective on so many different things. All right, let's take a look at what the Blue Jackets are going to be facing as they go through the next week or so. First of all, the Florida Panthers here at Nationwide Arena. That's going to be Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And then the Blue Jackets get on a plane right after the game and go to Pittsburgh. Now, for those of you that might be thinking, hey, Pittsburgh, that might be a soft game on the schedule. Well, it might be, but it might not be. The Penguins are not in the playoff race this year. But think about this Blue Jackets team the last couple of years when they haven't been in the playoffs, when you're just playing loose and carefree, and you've got some guys that are trying to really impress the management because they want to stay. The Penguins have nothing to play for, and they're going to be getting the Blue Jackets on the second half of a back-to-back. So you can't just look at that as an automatic win, and the Blue Jackets won't. They absolutely will not. But I'm just saying, you as a fan, that game is not as easy as it appears on the schedule. Then you've got to go to Long Island and take on the New York Islanders in the early part of next week. You come back home, and what do you have? The first part of the back-to-back, the Vancouver Canucks are going to be here, another team that is going to be tough to play against. And then you've got to go right to Ottawa to take on the Senators. The Ottawa Senators lately have caught fire. At one point, the Blue Jackets were right behind them in the wild card race, but they've been reeling off points, so that's going to be a tough one as well. As I said to you earlier, you look at the schedule, there's nothing easy. If this team is going to get into the playoffs, they are going to earn their way into the playoffs. Nobody is going to give it to them. So the schedule is daunting. However, this is the time of year where you want to have those kind of challenges. You really do. If you're going to be a playoff team, these are the kind of games that you want to play. And more importantly for the Blue Jackets, whatever happens here, this is the kind of experience that they need to get. So that's what the schedule looks like. Hope you'll join us at Nationwide Arena for the game against the Florida Panthers on Thursday night at 7 o'clock, because then they're going to be gone for a week and won't be back until the following Friday for that game against Vancouver. Of course, you can get your tickets anytime by going to BlueJackets.com. I would like to thank John Davidson for joining me today, and thank you for being along here on this edition of CBJ in 30, presented by Pedialyte. I'm Bob McElligott. So long.